Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. This week I'm going to be joined by Aaron Kim, who talks about various different things related to anxiety and mental torment, which is a very deep topic. But I think it's really important because that's something that Christians face. And, it's important for us to be able to know that as well, because whether we are facing it or other people in our lives are facing it, we are able to help people and have a bit of knowledge about it. So, yeah, this week he's going to be joining me, and I don't know too much about him. So, I thought to break the ice, we're going to do the classic game of this or that. So, we'll go into the game and then after that, go into the topic. Okay, so here we go. Are you a planner or do you go with the flow?
I like to go with the flow.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, my wife is a planner though.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, that's really cool. I would have thought you're more of a planner. I don't know why. I just would have assumed.
yeah.
City life or country life?
Country life.
Country life. I live
I
in
like
the country, the yeah, countryside as well. So
Oh,
that's
okay.
cats or dogs?
Dogs. I have one dog. Yeah,
Oh, okay,
Cavalier. Yeah.
nice. I've not grown up with pets, but I think I'd probably choose a cat just because it's
Okay.
lower maintenance.
Yeah.
Comedy or drama?
Comedy.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I didn't want to have too many, so we're gonna stop there. But I thought it'd be
Oh,
cool
no, you're fine.
to
Yeah.
introduce yourself and kind of let people know a bit more about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. First, thanks, Louis, for having me on your podcast. I hope this could help people and glorify God. So, my name is Aaron Kim. I live in Carmel, Indiana. It's kind of like the middle of the United States. And I will be considered like a country state, but I am in a city area. And I'm 40 years old. I have two daughters, 11 and 14, and I'm married to my wife for 16 years, I think. And yeah, we go to a Bible believing, Bible teaching church here named College Park, and we've been there for a while. And I think the reason why Louis has me on here is to share a little bit about how God helped me overcome and still overcome anxiety and despair and a lot of the other mental afflictions that many people go through, including Christians. And so before that, which happened about 8 years ago, I didn't have such a ministry. I didn't have the ability or even knowledge to help people in that kind of situation. So through the trial, that God kind of just opened my eyes, had me experience into the depths of some of that, and Him rescuing me through His Word and exercising my faith on my end. God pulled me out and gave me a testimony and try to share it with others. I have a YouTube channel that just started with my phone, just trying to help people that are in the same situation where they're basically out of hope. They're maybe suicidal. They cried out to God. They haven't heard anything. They don't feel anything or see anything, and they just feel like there is no other option. So that's where my heart has been for many years. I'll say 6 years or so in trying to help those fellow brothers and sisters in Christ.
Mm. Yeah, so that's how I found you through YouTube, your YouTube channel, and yeah, it's been just really great. And I kind of wanted to share it widely with my community, so I thought I'll bring you on. Um, I'm going to read this bit because I don't want to mess it up, but yeah,
Sure.
according to mind.org.uk, 1 in 6 people are reported to experience mental health issues such as anxiety and depression each week in the UK. And I was looking at the stats in the US as well. Apparently, 19% of the population deals with some form of disorder and anxiety disorder. And obviously, those people are probably some of those people are probably going to be Christians as well. So I wanted to kind of start there because a lot of Christians are facing anxiety, and not just like worry, which is obviously a human thing to worry about various different things, but actually like crippling anxiety or
Right.
like they would say, I'm somebody that suffers with anxiety or I have anxiety. Like they would label themselves like that. So why do you feel, I wanted to start at the point of this question, why do you feel that so many Christians are struggling with this, especially as Christians, we believe that we shouldn't be anxious for anything, like you should get some peace from the Lord and things like that. So it'd be great to know your thoughts on that and your experience in that as well.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. Why do so many Christians struggle with anxiety and I would say even depression and panic
Mm,
attacks and other things, insomnia? And what comes to mind first is that I think it's like everyone too, just non-Christians as well.
yeah.
And when Jesus said that you will have trouble, he was talking to Christians saying that you will have trouble in this life, and that includes all the mental afflictions that we may encounter. But ultimately, I think why Christians, including myself, have anxiety at times is because we're trying to hold on to control in areas where we cannot control, like what will happen in the future. We entertain thoughts that, like, what if this happens? What if that happens? And instead of trusting in God with our tomorrows, we try to control it today. And that's, I think, one of the primary reasons why some of us just start to worry and everybody worries, as everyone knows. But when you start worrying excessively and trying to hold on to the control that you think you do have and you don't, it could lead into crippling anxiety. And anxiety and depression often go hand to hand because one causes the other, it seems like, or vice versa. And you try hard enough where you try to control and you can't, you start losing hope. And I think the Christians that are struggling, they haven't learned to fully surrender to God and trust in Him with all of their troubles, all of their perceived control issues in their life. And instead, they're holding on. And I think that causes a lot of anxiety.
You hit the nail on the head because yeah, I definitely feel like it's a control thing sometimes. And we can't control lives, so it's a very difficult thing to go through. One of the things you mentioned was about the what ifs. That's a big one. Why do you think we also like tend to think of like the negatives? Because a what if could be like a positive thing. It could be like, what if I win the lottery or something? I don't know. But
Yeah.
we always tend to go to the negative. So I think there's also something in that where it's like we should try and think, more positively or yeah, think of other things that could happen, like the more positive side of things as well. I don't know if you had any comments on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I go further in saying that a lot of the mental afflictions, if you
Mhm.
notice, most of them are negative feelings as well. There's no mental affliction that causes you happiness or joy usually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, there's bipolar, but then that goes the other way as well, just as deep as the high. But in majority, it's the negative stuff that impacts us. And then when we think about what ifs, I think we do think a lot about the negatives,
Mm,
partly due to our flesh, but I think a huge equation that a lot of people don't realize is that we have the adversary attacking us through.
yeah.
And so these thoughts that we have, all the negative what ifs, like if my family's late, the first thought I have is maybe they got into a car accident, maybe something
Yeah.
terrible happened to them. And I think a lot of times the devil is actually feeding us, presenting these lies to us to cause us anxiety.
Hmm.
And when you realize that you're thinking about all these what ifs that you don't want to think about, that's a good clue that it's not from you. So I
Yeah.
think that's a big equation is the adversary.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd love us to get into your story, your testimony, because you obviously felt you went through anxiety and you overcame it through Jesus. So I'd
Mhm.
love us to kind of dive into that a bit more. How did it come about? And yeah, doesn't have to be the full story, but just an overview of it.
Sure. Yeah, it was about 8 years ago. I was about 32 or 33 years old, and I've been a Christian since the age of 24.
Hmm.
And I wanted to serve God. I wanted to please Him. I think a natural desire that comes as being, a Christian is just naturally there. And nothing seemed to be working. And I cried out to God many times for Him to use me to bear fruit. And the way that came was through a very vicious trial. And the trial came, this is just what happened in the my mother-in-law from South Korea sent over some Korean ginseng as a herbal health benefit, but I didn't know the side effect was insomnia. And some people actually could sleep better with it, but others it won't let them sleep. And so I took that for about 40 days on and off here and there and could not sleep much at all. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And during that time, I went to a state of much anxiety. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, researching on Google, all the medical websites, seeing my doctor, trying different prescription drugs, even at that time, and nothing worked. And it just got worse. But at one point, I just gave up. It was so much struggle. When you take away someone's sleep, I don't know if everyone has experienced it, but I think many have. It's very tough. But when it doesn't end and you don't know why it's going on, you could start really despairing life. And so that's where I was, and I surrendered to God, and I told him, Lord, if you want me to suffer more, that's okay. I just give into this pain.
Wait, wow. Sorry, I have to pause you there. That's
Yeah,
amazing that you were able to say that.
yeah,
Oh,
thanks.
yeah.
Yeah, it was difficult, and it was after a long time, like 40 days,
Yeah.
of going through affliction. And during that 40 days, I should mention, I tried a lot of things, including prayer, praising, counseling from Christians, and I felt like God was not answering. I didn't hear, feel, or see anything supernatural to even let me know, like, this is me working on you. Nothing. It
Mm.
was just torment. But after I surrendered that, after the 40 days, I heard from God speak to me for the first time in my life. And it was through a thought. And it was what has changed in the last 40 days. And actually, it's in the other room that I was praying. And I just stopped. And it caught me off guard because I've never heard that. And it was like a foreign thought. It was amazing. And I just answered the question, Korean ginseng, and I Googled it, side effect insomnia. And so after that, I thought I was healed, but it got worse.
Mm.
It was anxiety-induced insomnia. And at that point, I thought the Korean ginseng damaged my brain because I read the instructions saying you shouldn't take it for more than 2 weeks
Oh, wow.
at a time.
Gosh, I
So,
can imagine. Yeah.
yeah,
I wanted to ask a question about the Christian counseling actually, because obviously you did that and you didn't find it very useful. And I know a lot of people might think, okay, this is going to be like the answer to my prayers. And if it doesn't work out, it's quite disheartening. So it'd be great to know why the counseling didn't work and what type of counseling was it. And yeah, it'd be great to know a bit more about that as well.
yeah. First, I tried secular counseling as well a little
Mhm.
bit, and there was no help. It actually made my panic attacks worse. There was a lot of therapeutical procedures to help get your mind off the anxiety-inducing subjects, and it actually made that monster of darkness bigger as I tried to hide from it. And so trying to like run away from it made it scarier in my mind, and the panic attacks got worse. The Christian counseling that I went to, one I went to later helped tremendously, but I went to another formal one here that was, covered under insurance, and it just I felt like the counselor didn't know how to deal with this. It was very deep. So I had panic attacks, anxiety, depression, insomnia, and suicidal thoughts. And by the way, the depression was very bad. It wasn't, I've had depression once in my life, but this was something where I felt like I was already dead, in the inside, and I don't know how I'm still alive, kind of depression.
Mm.
But yeah, he kind of went through some Bible verses I remember, and he just listened a lot, but didn't provide much guidance like Grace Fellowship International did. That's the Christian counseling that I found a lot of help in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. And then you said about the thing that really intrigued me about your testimony was how you were confident to know, okay, not just this bit, but this bit stands out to me as well. Um, how you were confident to know that that voice that you heard was God, because it's like, sometimes it's like it could be just something else, could be your imagination. Like, how were you confident to know, like, this is God? I'm gonna look into it a bit more.
Yeah, that's a good question because I've been on the more superstitious side. My wife
Mhm.
would tell me, my parents like, yeah, I don't know if that was really from God. That certain, I'm like, I don't know. It seems like it's from God.
Yeah.
But I'm very objective too. Like I need to know for sure. I won't say it's from God unless I'm
Mm.
positive. And there's only been a few times where I experienced God, and that speaking was just something I've never heard or experienced. And it wasn't audible. I
Mm.
didn't hear his voice, the tone of his voice in my head. It was like a very powerful speaking in my mind. It was a
Yeah.
thought. That's the best way to put it. It wasn't a voice, but a very loud thought where it just came from somewhere else. Like I
Yeah.
didn't try to think of it. I wasn't even thinking about that at all. It just came out of nowhere. So I knew, I mean, I never experienced anything like that before. And I heard God speak one more time after that, and I was in the pit of my trial as well.
Hmm. No, I feel like that's happened to me before, where it's like I come from a side where it's like I rarely believed in any like supernatural things. So like it took a long time for me to sometimes to be honest, to just to let that go. So there was a time where the Lord told me something about somebody and then I had to research it and then I found out that that was true. So I do feel like sometimes the Lord does put things on our hearts or like discernment or various things that don't come from us, that just come from him clearly. So yeah, I can
Yeah.
definitely see how that's possible.
And so basically, to make the story a little faster, I went downhill. I continued to get worse. The depression and anxiety got so much worse where the anxiety turned into my attention span going down to like 4 seconds or less. So I couldn't even hold a conversation. And
Mhm.
it was really hard to work, as you could imagine. And I went to the bottom after a total of 3 months. And at the point of the 3 months, I tried prescription medication, I think 6 different kinds. I admitted myself into a mental hospital, which made it worse. And I was out of options. And that's where my dad recommended a book called Handbook to Happiness by Charles Solomon. And that's where I heard about Grace Fellowship International. And to
Mhm.
make all the counseling really straightforward, it was surrender. Let go, even though you don't understand. Know that God is working on your behalf for your good, and the trials are good for us. The
Mhm.
trials are doing for you like what exercise does for the athlete. As you lift the weight, it burns and hurts, but it's actually helping you and building your faith up. And so I started to change my thinking into biblical thinking, like in James chapter 1, saying, Count it all joy, even when the suffering comes. Like in First Peter, it might have been Second Peter, where we suffer for a little while, but God Himself will restore us. And there's just so many examples in the Old Testament and New Testament where people were helped through the trial, like Joseph went through so much trial to be built up in character, to be second in command in Pharaoh, to save many lives. And so I started to be thankful for the pain. I started to thank God for the anxiety, the depression, for humbling me. And I started to thank God for the less sleep I was getting because I knew that the lack of sleep was actually being worked for my good because God said so in Romans chapter 8, verse 28.
Mhm.
And so when that thinking changed, and I was only able to do that because I was absolutely depleted of myself. Like I had no more hope in anything. And it wasn't just bringing me to my knees. I was melted before God. I just felt like no identity in myself. I had no resemblance of any, even a human being. Like I'd rather be an ant at that point. And so
Mhm.
I had nothing.
Yeah.
And so when I started to read the word of God and the promises, like Romans 8:28 and 2 Corinthians 12:9, that says, My grace is enough for you. I was
Mhm.
saying, God, help me. And he's saying, I have given you everything you need today to endure, to overcome, and even behave as a child of God.
Mhm.
And so the bottom line was for the next 3 months, I went down 3 months, going up 3 months was just as hard. I just started to believe in God's word. I started blocking out all the lies, all the what ifs. What if you never sleep again? What if your brain is damaged? What if you lose your job? What if this happens? I said, I'm just gonna not worry, but I'm just gonna focus on today and go by God's grace. Tomorrow, God's grace will be available. Today, I know His grace is available. And I'm just going to move forward in faith at work, taking care of my family, doing every little thing, mowing the lawn. I'm going
Mhm.
to trust God that His grace is sufficient and that He's somehow working all this for good. There is a point to all this pain and trial. I don't understand right now, but I believe Him. And so that gave me hope. That even gave me joy in the midst of affliction. And so, as I focused on God's promises and God's promises alone, the next 3 months, my body healed, my mind healed, and I was sleeping again, and I was fully healed at that point from all my afflictions.
That's amazing.